We know that we have a tight domestic airline market dominated by WestJet and Air Canada. The Competition Bureau says that, for one thing, Ottawa should loosen investment rules and allow full foreign ownership of air carriers that just fly within the domestic market. And of course, that would open up capital, let it flood into this market potentially, and create more rivalry, at least for flights within Canada. The watchdog says our research shows that when just one new competitor flies on a route between two cities, airfares go down by 9%. Let's get more from Keldon Bester, Executive Director at the Canadian Anti-Monopoly Project. And he previously worked for the Competition Bureau himself. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Keldon, just summarize these recommendations for the competition from the Competition Bureau towards improving price competition within Canada. What were the one or two things that you think looked like good ideas? What jumped out for you?
Well, the most promising from our perspective is taking a look at the fee system that funds our airports and air travel system. You know, the Bureau notes that 30 cents of every dollar on a ticket can be comprised of these airport and fuel fees. And so changing how we fund those, moving towards a way that favors smaller and more regional competitors, we think would go a long way to spurring competition where we need it most in Canada.
It's interesting, yeah, you highlight the fees, and I was amazed. Up to 30% of the cost of a ticket just going to these airports and governments of various kinds.
Yeah, you know, it's a choice that we made of how to fund our air travel system, but the way it's set up right now, it means that it's harder for some of the exciting discount and smaller players that we've seen, frankly, grow and some struggle in the past couple of years. And that's where we think the most potential for relief that, you know, the Competition Bureau recognizes is possible.
Why would these fees be especially hard on the startups?
Well, the way that they are structured right now is that they operate in a way that a smaller player and a smaller plane, frankly, a bigger part of their expense can't be spread across a larger aircraft. So regional airlines have argued that something more like a per-seat approach, even that would allow fees to come down for smaller planes and smaller players and allow them to compete more aggressively.
Another interesting idea that you have is we know that remote communities in Canada, northern communities, it's very expensive. And you think the government should explore what you call a utility-like approach here that would provide reliable and reasonably priced service. What does that mean? Can you explain?
Well, the reality is that there are communities in Canada, you know, the way this country is spread out, that the market, even in its perfect form, will not serve. And so if we believe that communities of a certain size or, you know, specific communities deserve routine and affordable service, then we're going to need to intervene in some fashion, whether that's a subsidy model, or as some colleagues down in the States have pushed, a regional conference or draft approach. We need to accept that we can't count on the market alone to deliver for these rural communities that we feel should be connected to the rest of Canada.
Right. So how would you do that? Would you, for example, have regulated profits and subsidies for those smaller centres?
Yeah, there are a number of different models, but at some level you're going to need to set what you feel is an appropriate return for the airlines, as well as an appropriate price for the people accessing the services. So some level of intervention is going to be required, and how you allocate routes can be on sort of a draft system similar to sports leagues, or sort of regions can be assigned to regulated providers.
What do you think? What would you have liked to have seen the Competition Bureau do or recommend that they didn't? Are there areas where you'd like to see them go further?
Well, one area in particular that we noticed was absent is addressing the massive backlog of complaints in front of the Transportation Agency right now, something like 60 or 70,000. Canada is actually a leader in terms of our regulations for consumer protection in Canada. But if these complaints are taking years to be resolved, we really don't see the benefit of it. And so we really need to focus on either streamlining or adequately funding that process to deal with that backlog.
And we're tight for time. The Globe and Mail ran a great series over the past couple of years called Secret Canada about poor government disclosure in many areas. You would like to see better disclosure of air travel data to consumers. Could you explain briefly what you mean by that?
Absolutely. You know, the more data that we have, the more transparently consumers can make decisions on which airline has been performing the best. And the U.S. is a model that we could really follow here in increasing transparency and competition.
We'll have to leave it there, Keldon, but thank you just very quickly, Keldon, and we've only 30 seconds. Is there really political will, do you think, in Ottawa to improve competition? Or do WestJet and Air Canada have such lobbying power that we'll never really see decisive action by government here?
Well, there's always a will, and I think the government's recent focus on nation building can really make air travel and our air travel market a part of that. So I'm optimistic.